Hello everyone, this is Suman and welcome to the podcast. I'm happy to have with us today Mohit Mehrotra, who is joining us to speak on today's topic, which is leading with Candour. Quick intro about Mohit. He is the managing director of Omnicom India, a global technology leader in vehicle analytics, has a rich experience of over 25 years with companies such as Unilever and Cisco. He's a postgraduate of IIM Lucknow and above all, a dear friend. Welcome, Mohit.
Hi, Shuman. Good to see you. Good to hear from you.
Great to have you. So let me quickly kick off today's topic by defining the topic, which is candor, and why is it important. So the definition of candor is about being honest and open, right? It sounds very simplistic. It's about being frank. It's about having trust. Now, the word that's being associated with that is transparency. In fact, a lot of companies today are talking of transparency. There's a lot of buzz around this. And when you hear transparency, often it's about full disclosure of financial information to investors and to public. Uh, but frankly, no organization can be honest with the public if it's not honest with itself, right? So it needs a broader view. And with that view, I think it can be defined as degree to which information flows freely within a company, right? Among managers, employees, and then outward to stakeholders. So that's a much broader thing, and that is what transparency is. So Mohit, when we were speaking earlier, you brought up this topic about leading with candor. So why? So let me pose this question to you: why is leading with candor important?
Shuman, you said a lot of things around how organizations are trying to be more transparent externally, right? But at the core of everything today, it's all about trust.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about trust. Employees, organizations, people in general are a bit tired of all the marketing that they see, all the things that they see, the hyperbole that they see around marketing and communication. And and interestingly, trustful conversations are popular all around, whether it is in college dorms or whether it's young organizations like startups trying to make an impact out there. Everybody is trying to be having more trustful conversations, and I think somewhere this whole movement towards candor is actually coming out of this desire to be having more authentic, genuine, trustful conversations.
Okay.
Right. One of the examples that I also, that I see in everyday life is that, more and more people today, young people particularly, whenever they're buying a product, uh, do not like to look at the advertising, uh, but very quickly go back and actually check YouTube videos made by users who've tried the product, right? And that's an
Yeah.
example where people unbox the product, they report something about it, good, bad, and it kind of gives people the power to make the decisions, right? So
Right.
those are some of these examples. I remember we were having, going back to my days during the foods business at Unilever, there was a time there when I was running a relatively smaller business around um, bread. We had bought a company called Modern Foods, and we were making bread, and we would go around talking to consumers, a lot of mothers, as to what exactly are they looking for in the bread that they buy every day. And through all of these conversations where we were trying to talk about vitamins, we were trying to talk about milk and all the benefits of this, a lot of mothers kept telling us, we trust atta. We trust atta because at the end of the day, we believe that a lot of the bread that's bought has got, a lot of bread that's produced has maida in it. And ultimately for us, north, south, east, west, everybody seemed to be using the word atta. And somebody in the organization had the great idea to then say, let's call this bread as atta bread. And today you see a ubiquitous, range of a generic range of breads that have sprung up, calling themselves atta bread. So people felt atta as the ingredient, which is a trustful ingredient.
Excellent, excellent example.
Shuman, I was just thinking about our discussion today before we started,
Yeah.
and I just want to understand from you, where are we in terms of the transparency and candor that you talk about? What's the state of things around?
Yeah, that's a good question. There was some survey which was done, and almost two-thirds of the people surveyed described their own company culture as opaque, not transparent. So I think hoarding of information is very common, and I'm sure you'll agree with me based on your experience in the corporate world, based on my experience. And I think there could be multiple reasons. Leaders try to hoard and control information. It's really like a source of power. Sometimes they feel that they need to provide information, whatever people need, or if I provide sensitive information, we don't know how that's going to be used. So I think our human behavior is such that we don't want to share, right? And something stops us. Sometimes not being opaque also allows us to hide embarrassing mistakes, right? So the default seems to be that we don't want to be transparent. And sometimes, and it doesn't even cross our minds as a leader. Sometimes you don't realize that something that you're taking for granted, a piece of information, is known only to you and some others, a small coterie of people, but bulk of the organization doesn't even know it, and you're not aware that they don't know it because nobody has communicated that to them. Yeah. So short answer, yes, transparency is not common, and I think it goes against human nature. What's your view, Mohit?
Yeah, Shuman, when you were talking about it, I just kept thinking about this beautiful example that I read recently. There's a book by Reed Hastings, the founder of
Uh-huh.
Netflix, and he's a great proponent of trustful organization without a trustful culture within an organization and everything that goes around it, and transparency. And he gives a beautiful example of how um, a, a very difficult moment in every manager's life is when they have to let go of people. and and quite often, people try to sugarcoat the letting go, so they will have a hard conversation with that particular employee inside the room, but once they're outside, they will say, Mr. So and so has decided to leave the organization because he's going out for something, something which is more exciting. However, and what's the intent behind that? The intent is that we do not wish to hurt the leaving employee. We do not want to create some kind of a buzz when there's something that doesn't exist. Um, but the reality is quite different. What Reed was giving an example was that the usually before the departure of an employee, the organization, the grapevine, is already abuzz with a lot of things that are not going so right between this employee and the manager. And therefore he started this practice of being brutally honest, whenever he was letting go an employee. So he would typically propagate, and he would encourage his managers to actually um, have a meeting immediately after the employee is left, or at the next available time, and convey to people why the employee was leaving. And if it meant that the employee was not doing well in the organization, he would let people know that. Initially, people were shocked, but Shuman, I'll give you a personal example. I read the book, and I said, let me try this. And we had to do something like this for an employee who left us recently, or rather was asked to go recently. After our initial conversation, um, we walked out of the room, and then I called a meeting of my direct reports, and I said, look, Mr. So and so is leaving. As you guys know, things have not been going on well between me and him, and both ways. And we just had to make the decision to cut the cord at this point. And it just loosened up the entire set of people, because people got the answer they were looking for. They knew that there were hard, there was a difficult conversations happening. They knew that this was not something, not a situation where the employee was leading for something better, but it was a separation, and they got the answer. And however, there's one thing that we did. We said, once the person leaves the organization, we agreed on what to communicate to the external world, what to communicate to the partners as well as to the customers, so that the employee does not have a problem finding another job, or putting his resume in the market. And I thought that was, for me, a very personal example of taking a leaf from a reed, and it worked well.
Yeah, that's a very interesting point you bring up. In fact, and that could be one of the reasons why we are hesitant in being transparent, because we are always wondering, how much transparency is good, right? In this example, for instance, if you had just sugarcoated it, people wouldn't have believed you, right? So the entire authenticity becomes a challenge, right? Whereas the moment you told them that, look, we had to let him go, I'm sure people already knew about it, right? So that
Exactly.
could also be one of the reasons. So yeah, excellent example.
Uh, Shuman, you know, what's driving this change? Why are people, why are organizations trying to move towards more candor? Why are companies talking about greater transparency today? Don't you see more of this happening? And why are they doing that?
I think they're being forced to do it in a way, because what's happening is, gone are the days where you could keep information under wraps. Technology is creating transparency. Internet is creating transparency. Whether you like it or not, it's happening. That example, this where I think this happened a few years back, where this person was fired without dues paid. He was told by the HR person that you need to quit by 10 a.m. tomorrow, uh, or you don't get anything paid to you, right? All that the guy did was, he recorded it on his phone, and the entire thing went viral. So much so that there's a tweet by the Tech Mahindra CEO, Gurnani. There was an official statement from the Tech Mahindra Vice Chairman, Vineet Nair, and followed by a personal apology by their group chairman, Anand Mahindra. So imagine a small, somebody who's many levels down does something, and the chairman of the company has to come and apologize. Right now, obviously, you don't want a situation like that playing out. In fact, in that apology, he also said that we will ensure that this kind of thing doesn't happen again. And whether it's in corporate life, whether it's outside, everything is getting recorded on videos and people are seeing it. So it's very difficult for anybody to spin stories. What you see, because you're seeing it in front of you, right? Um, I think even the Black Lives Matter, right? That entire video created such a shocking effect worldwide. Um, so I think, yeah, I mean, and that's a good thing. And of course, if you try to keep it under wraps, there are also whistleblowers. So there are many examples. I mean, and once it leaks out, technology ensures that it goes viral. Right? So yeah, I think the biggest driver of that change is probably technology. What's your view?
Yeah, Sean, absolutely correct. That I think it's technology. It's the fact that um, we're hiring the employee, the workforce is maturing at very young age. People can't just, people. Gone are the days when you would walk into an organization and you would actually take 3 or 4 days to just hang around and be a sort of a teenager in the organization. People are walking into the organization with very clear understanding of their lifespan there. They know they have to be there for 1 or 2 years, do a gig, move out. And so therefore we are also getting very, very young but very mature people. And people have seen there's lots of information that's available all across, right? And technology is certainly aiding the availability of that information. I think a lot of this, at the end of the day, Shuman, I feel there is just too much. There was too much fluff going around. As people, as cultures, we are tending to gravitate towards greater authenticity.
Mm-hmm.
it's all, people are expecting greater authenticity, and I can see it in everyday transactions, even with customers. Let me give you an example. Recently one of my very good sales guy walked into my room a couple of days ago and said that there was a particular new partner of ours, or new customer of ours whom we were trying to woo, and he Malesh told me that this customer is not coming on board. He's decided to go with competitor, and that we are just not going to get the order that we were all hoping to get. I said, let's do one thing. I immediately called up the customer. I'd never spoken to him before. I said, I want to have a video call with you. The customer was surprised, why are you having a video call? But he said, okay, fine, let's do a video call. We got into the video, we started talking, and I introduced myself. And then I told him that, look, Mr. So-and-so, I'm calling you today because I'm losing. I said, I'm losing, and that's why I'm calling you. And Shuman, it had such a magical effect. The fact that I just mentioned to him that I'm calling you because I'm losing, it just made me very vulnerable in front of the customer. But it also, it was a transaction which was a trustful transaction that we had at that moment. And the customer immediately, we connected at that point. And then I started to share with him. I said, here are the two reasons why you should be with us. Here is the one, here is the price point which, on which you're supposedly not going to give me the order. Here is what I have shared with you. And I was very honest with him. I also told him that normally I do not share anti-competitive information. Like I do not share information where I pull down my competitor, but today I will do it because I'm losing and I want you to know what you're walking into. And these 2 or 3 things just completely turned the tide. 15 minutes later, we were having such an authentic conversation between us. The customer said, look, I'm going to reconsider this. Give me a day. And sure enough, 2-3 days later, the order came to us.
Wow, that's a great example. I think that's a very real example of how being authentic and the fact that you said that I'm losing actually helped you turn the whole deal. Awesome. So let me bring in Bajrang. Bajrang, I hope you're able to speak. I saw your question. So why don't you just quickly state your question?
जी मेरा एक सवाल है आप दोनों से कि क्या ज़्यादा ट्रांसपेरेंसी एक कंपनी के लिए या ऑर्गेनाइजेशन के लिए बेनिफिशियल होने के साथ कोई दिक्कत भी पैदा कर सकती है? कि अगर किसी कंपनी में ट्रांसपेरेंसी होती है तो क्या-क्या दिक्कत हो सकती है वहाँ पे?
बजरंग, आपने बहुत अच्छा सवाल पूछा। इनफैक्ट शुमन, क्या मैं आंसर?
प्लीज गो अहेड।
ये देखो, अभी मैंने आपको एक ये नेटफ्लिक्स का एग्जांपल देखा था, तो वहां पर भी एक बहुत ज्यादा ट्रांसपेरेंसी का इशू आ गया था कि जब एम्प्लॉय छोड़ता है तो ऑब्वियसली उसको बहुत, एम्प्लॉय छोड़ के कहीं जा रहा है बाहर, और उसको ऐसा नहीं होना चाहिए कि इतनी ट्रांसपेरेंसी हो जाए कि मार्केट में हंगामा हो जाए कि ये एम्प्लॉय क्यों छोड़ के जा रहा है। तो वहां पर उन्होंने, मिस्टर रीड हेस्टिंग्स ने बहुत अच्छा एक गाइडलाइन डाली। उन्होंने कहा कि इनसाइड द ऑर्गेनाइजेशन हम लोग, वी विल बी कैंडिड विद ईच अदर। हम लोग अपने एक दूसरे को क्लियर बताएंगे कि क्यों वो जा रहे हैं। बट एक बार वो ऑर्गेनाइजेशन के बाहर जाते हैं तो वहां पर हम लोग एक स्टैंडर्ड कम्युनिकेशन लाइन उन्होंने डिफाइन करी कि ये एम्प्लॉय बेटर अपॉर्चुनिटीज के लिए जा रहे हैं। तो वो एक एग्जाम्पल था, एक प्रैक्टिकल एग्जाम्पल था।
Correct. I think that's a good one. I think even in our day-to-day lives, there are certain things which are not supposed to be known to each other, right? I think we need to respect that. For instance, Vajrang, you mentioned na कि क्या दिक्कत आ सकती है. So, for instance, if people get to know how much people are making money, how much money everybody is making, right? It can create a lot of problem. And often you'll find in this discussion, people will come and say, "Nee, this fellow is getting this much, this fellow is getting that much." Ideally, that is not supposed to be disclosed. See, I think its disclosure has to be balanced with, honoring a few principles, honoring the dignity, all of those things. So, few things which are supposed to be confidential, obviously, in the name of transparency, you should not bring it out.
Correct.
Yeah. So, Simi says US federal salaries are all posted online. Okay. Yeah, that's also transparency. By the way, we're almost out of time.